Unit 7. The Enemy. The Enemy by Sandra Emick Wright. You know, Sandra here is the author, and as we said before, the author who writes the story. The author, the person who writes the story. Okay, well, so I want to ask you a question. From this picture, can you guess what this story is about? Okay, we are going to know more information about our story, The Enemy. Let's see. Okay, who can tell me what can you see in this picture? Yes, I hear you. In this picture, we have a young girl and a boy. They are fighting together. So, what does it mean? They are not friends? Maybe. Or what? They are enemies? Okay, so let's see, what does the enemy mean? The enemy may be a person, okay, who hates someone or speaks against him. So they are not friends, as we said before. Or what? Or a country that you are fighting over against the soldiers. Before we go through our story, I want you to think about these questions. Okay, for example, why is it important to show kindness? Have you ever met someone who was very different from you, but you ended up becoming your friends anyway? Okay, what do we risk if we make up our mind about people before we have a chance to get to know them? These are the vocabulary, our target vocabulary. Let's read them together. I'm gonna read them and you're gonna repeat after me. The first word is trudged, trudged, weary, weary, pallet, pallet, militia, invading, ragged, prodding, surrendered, halting, halting, rebels, allies, scrawny, scolded, and stormed. Let's start our reading part. But before we start, I want you to underline our target vocabulary and get the setting of the story. Okay? Now let's start. Granny and I watched from the front door of our cabin as the last of the camp followers trudged past. They were a sad and weary lot, women with babies on their hips, and ragged children no older than me prodding cows and sheep along the muddy road. The defeated British and German soldiers had already marched downriver. My brother David refused to watch them pass by. He lay on the pallet before the fire, the stump of his right leg bound in bandages. I have seen all the Prussians, Brunswickers, and Hessians I ever want to see, he grumbled. David had joined the militia when he heard that an invading army led by British General John Burgoyne was coming our way. Now, let's get our target vocabulary. Trudged, weary, excellent, ragged, prodding, what else? Exactly, pallet, militia, invading. David was with the American army when they made a stand at Bemis Heights, just north of our village. As his company stormed an enemy stronghold 11 days ago. His leg was shattered. Surgeons had to cut it off. When the American army surrounded the General Burgoyne finally surrendered, David was proud of the great victory. But I knew he worried about how he would take care of Granny and me, now that he had only one leg. It was growing dark. I lit the candles and put the checkboard on the floor in the front of David. We played checkers every night. Sarah, go feed the cow and bring in some firewood, Granny said. We will play after supper, I told David. I put my woolen shawl tie around my shoulder and walked to the stable. The cow was curled in her stall chewing her cud. I took down the pitchfork from the big and thrust its points into the pile of hay in the corner stall. Now, let's underline our target vocabulary. Yes, surrounded. Halton. A scrawny boy burst from the pile, his fists clenched. I pointed the pitchfork at him and stood my ground. Who are you? What are you doing here? I demanded. He lowered his fists. Please, I can march no further, he said in halting English. Let me rest here tonight, and I will go on in the morning. Okay, now, who can tell me one of our target vocabulary? Yes, halting. Excellent. You were traveling with the army? The boy nodded. Papa was a Hessian soldier. He was killed by rebels 10 days past. Your mamma? Dead also. There is much disease in the camps. You have no family? He shook his head. My name is Sarah, I said. Tossing hay into the cow's manger, I leaned the pitchfork against the wall. I am Wilhelm. By morning, Wilhelm, the army and its followers will be gone. They are crossing the river tonight, going on the Boston. Wilhelm hefted the dirty plank roll onto the shoulders. Then I must go. He was barefoot. How are you going to walk all the way to Boston with no shoes? I asked. I marched from Canada with no shoes. I do not need shoes to get to Boston. Hessian men can do anything. Now, our time with the target vocabulary. The first word is rebels. Excellent. Now, let's continue our reading part 2. Hessian men? Wilhelm couldn't have been more than 8 years old. My parents had both died before I was 8, but Granny and David took care of me. Who would care for Wilhelm? Are you hungry? I asked. Wilhelm nodded. Yeah. Granny always said that we should offer the hand of friendship to anyone who needed it. Wilhelm was our hungry. Sorry, Wilhelm was our enemy, but he sure did need a friend. What would David say when I pulled a Hessian boy into our cabin? David had nearly died fighting to protect our home from the British and their German allies. Granny is fixing supper. You must eat before you go on your way, I said. Danke, said Wilhelm. My brother was badly wounded in the battle that took your father. I told him. He may not take kindly to you being here. I gathered an armful of firewood from the woodshed. Wilhelm slung his blanket, rolled behind his back, and picked up 2 logs. Our target vocabulary, allies. I opened the door. Wilhelm followed me inside. We piled the firewood on the stone hearth. Granny, David, I said, this is Wilhelm. He has no family. May he stay for supper? David shifted on the pallet and glared at the boy. His papa was a Hessian soldier, I said. He died in the battle. The battle is over, Granny said. She put another plate on the table. Okay, here we have glared. You know, glared means what? Glared means to look at somebody in an angry way. I have been thinking, I said, helping David up. We can use an extra hand while you were laid up. Wilhelm tells me Hessian men can do anything. Can he stay? David scowled at Wilhelm. I held my breath. Was he going to send the boy out into the cold night? Wilhelm, he said finally, can you drive an ox team? Ja, said Wilhelm. Can you split wood? Ja. Can you play checkers better than my sister can? Wilhelm's blue eyes twinkled. Ja, he said. David smiled. He can stay. Yes, our target vocabulary, scalded. Here we have an exercise at the end of our lesson. I want you to fill in the blank with the correct vocabulary words from the bank, like ragged, weary, militia, invading, halting, stormed, and so on. Okay? So I want you to put the appropriate word in its correct place. This is the rest of our exercise. Here we have finished our lesson. Wish you best of luck.